Welcome to Mythtastic. In today's video, we'll be discussing 10 myths regarding Halloween. Halloween's one of the most widely celebrated holidays around the world. It's something that many people look forward to every year. Most people remember spending weeks deciding what they wanted to dress up as for Halloween, or the excitement of bringing home their collection of trick-or-treat candies and sorting through their favorite treats. With Halloween originating as far as 2,000 years ago, many myths have been made throughout the years. Whether they are fact or fiction will be determined in today's video. Myth number 1. People try to poison children's trick-or-treat candies. Some people might remember trick-or-treating as kids, hoping for their favorite chocolates or candies and pouring them out to go through them as soon as they got home. But before this, their parents go through their candies to check for any suspicious wrappers, objects, or homemade treats that could be harmful. With around $2.6 billion spent on Halloween candy in the US alone, many parents are skeptical with the idea of letting their kids accept candy from a complete stranger. One of the most common myths about Halloween is that people try to poison Halloween candy when handing out trick-or-treats. It is believed by the majority that celebrate the holiday. But is this true? There was only one reported incident where a child was fatally poisoned from trick-or-treat candies. This was back in 1974 when an 8-year-old named Timothy O'Brien ate a pixie stick which was laced with cyanide. What makes this even sadder is that it was his own dad who poisoned his candy. He wasn't the only child who got handed laced candy. Timothy's father, Ronald Clark O'Brien, also tried to poison his other daughter Elizabeth and 2 other children as well, but luckily they hadn't eaten them yet. Police were able to pin Ronald to the crime and found out he had recently had 2 large life insurance policies placed on both his children and tried to poison the 4 other random children so he wouldn't look so suspicious. He was later convicted of his crimes and was given the death penalty, being executed in 1984 by lethal injection. After his incident, many people have feared that their children's candy might also be poisoned during Halloween, which is why many parents check candies after trick-or-treating. But this isn't something that should scare anyone. There has been no other attempts to poison children ever since 1974. Although it's better to be safe than sorry, it isn't anything that commonly happens while celebrating Halloween. Myth number 2. Halloween is a satanic holiday. With most holidays being related to religion, it isn't a surprise that people think that Halloween is satanic. After all, it is a holiday that embraces horror, where people dress up as creepy creatures, make terrifying attractions just to startle people. Majority of people consider it a fun-natured holiday, nothing more. Some religious people think that the holiday holds darkness. It's a time where dark spirits are the strongest. They also believe that Halloween was created by satanic followers for this reason. This is actually false. The Church of Satan doesn't even tie it into their religious practices, although they do say that they accept it. If you didn't know that the Church of Satan was a thing, don't worry. We didn't either. The holiday's actual origin is from a religious festival called Samhain, which was created by the ancient Celtic religion, which is now known as Celtic paganism. This festival would have people light bonfires and wear costumes to ward off any ghosts that might cause harm to them and their crops. In the 1800s, Halloween became more about people getting together and celebrating rather than things like ghosts and witchcraft. And it wasn't until the 1920s that Halloween became a holiday that had no religious ties. It was more about parties and vandalism. It was between the 1920s and 1950s that trick-or-treating began to popularize and make Halloween the holiday that it is today. Halloween has never had any satanic ties and should be celebrated as a fun get-together rather than anything else. Myth number 3. Trick-or-treat started from kids demanding candy. Many people don't take time to question the logistics of why one night out of the whole year, kids dress up in costumes and ask complete strangers for candy who happily provide them with some. Some just assume that it stems from the 1930s where kids were vandalizing and playing pranks around Halloween time, so adults handed out candy to try and limit kids from acting up. This actually isn't the case, as trick-or-treating actually comes from over 1,000 years ago in England, when poor people would go to wealthy people's houses begging for food. The rich would give beggars food called soul cakes. In return, they asked the poor to send a prayer for their dead relatives. This would turn into a tradition called guising, where children would dress up in costumes and go door to door asking for gifts, and in return would perform a trick before receiving their gift, which is where the name trick-or-treat comes from. Trick-or-treating became a thing in America during the early 20th century when Irish and Scottish citizens and immigrants revived their tradition of guising. But it wasn't until post-World War II that trick-or-treating rose to be a popular tradition, since treats weren't able to be given out during the war due to a sugar rationing. Myth number 4, pumpkins have always been a part of Halloween. One guarantee that comes with Halloween is seeing pumpkins, whether they're in festive treats and coffees or carved jack-o'-lanterns used for decoration. But regardless of how they're used, you won't be able to go through October without seeing one pumpkin-related item. Most people can't recall the last time Halloween didn't involve pumpkins, which makes everyone think that they've always been a part of the holiday. But many don't know whether this is fact or fiction. The origins of pumpkins being tied to Halloween began with the Irish folklore of a man who was nicknamed Stingy Jack. The story goes that Jack tricked the devil so much that God wouldn't allow such an unpleasant person into heaven. The devil wouldn't allow Jack into hell because of an agreement he made with him to leave him alone. So he was sent to the night with just a burning coal that he put in a carved turnip, which is where the nickname jack-o'-lantern comes from. People in Ireland and Scotland began to carve their own turnips with scary faces to scare away Stingy Jack and any other evil spirits that might wander into their houses. It wasn't until the 19th century that turnips would be replaced for pumpkins, since when the Ireland and Scotland immigrants came to the United States, they thought pumpkins were the perfect fruit to make into a spooky jack-o'-lantern. So pumpkins have not been a part of Halloween since the creation of the holiday, but pumpkins have been a part of Halloween since modern times. Myth number 5, black cats are a symbol of bad luck. A famous superstition that is known by many is that if a black cat crosses your path, you'll be cursed with bad luck. This superstition becomes most popular around Halloween since black cats are associated with the tales of witches. Fear of black cats began as early as medieval times in France and Spain, as black cats were accused of being linked to witchcraft and feared by people. Black cats became considered a symbol in the United States during the 1600s when the Pilgrims of Plymouth came to colonize. Many feared the idea of witches and would execute anyone with the slightest superstition under their idea of witchcraft. Sadly, black cats were no different. They were believed to work with witches and even sometimes considered a witch in disguise themselves. If caught, were burned alive. Colonists even created their own days out of the week called Shrove Tuesday for hunting black cats. Luckily for black cats, most consider them loving animal companions, but some are still skeptical of them, especially around Halloween time. People have been less likely to adopt black cats because of their superstition versus other fur colors. Many will adopt black cats during Halloween time for the festivity, then abandon them after the holiday. Some are even in danger since adopters are sometimes known to take in black cats for pranks, which often involve the harm of the cat. Which is why most adoption centers hold off on adopting black cats around Halloween. Superstition of black cats being bad luck is still around today, but it shouldn't be taken seriously, since the origins of this fear came from long ago where people weren't capable of thinking logistically. In reality, black cats are loving creatures who have a bad reputation, especially around Halloween time. Myth number 6, dressing up on Halloween started from a costume contest. One of the most popular parts of Halloween is dressing up as your favorite characters for the night and celebrating the holiday, whether it's trick-or-treating or having a get-together with friends and family. Dressing up for Halloween has always been a part of tradition, and considering $3.2 billion were spent on costumes in the United States in 2019 alone, it could be said it isn't going to die in the near future, with the exception of this year due to COVID-19 still being a thing. Something that many people don't know is the real reason behind why people began to dress up for Halloween. One common idea that some believe is that wearing costumes on Halloween night originated from a costume contest, which isn't the case. As we mentioned earlier, costumes were first worn on Halloween night as far back as 2,000 years ago, when the Celtic pagan religion would wear scary costumes to scare off harmful ghosts. Pagans believed that the night of October 31st was when the boundary between the spirit world and the human world was weakest, so they thought disguises would hide their true identity from ghosts, which probably just made them look really stupid if anything. The tradition of Halloween costumes came to America in the 18th century when Irish and Scottish immigrants brought holiday traditions over. The idea of dressing up one night of the year intrigued Americans. People began making costumes with whatever was laying around in their house. The center of designs being anonymity, which is what intrigued Americans the most. The tradition of Halloween costumes has risen in popularity ever since, and what helped it to be what it is today was in the 1920s and 1930s when dressing up became targeted at kids and adults. It was around this same time that pop culture began to be implemented in costumes, which also helped the tradition gain traction. Myth number 7, Halloween is mainly an American holiday. Some holidays are celebrated differently around the world, or not even celebrated at all, and others are widely celebrated. One of them being Halloween. Might seem like it's just an American holiday, but it's celebrated in countries like Canada, Ireland, Mexico, and other Latin American countries, although it's not called Halloween in other parts of the world. In Latin America, they call it Dia de los Muertos, which means the Day of the Dead. And it's a night devoted to honoring loved ones and ancestors who have passed on. In places like Mexico, Dia de los Muertos is a multiple-day celebration from October 31st to November 2nd, where families believe that the dead come back to visit their homes on Earth, so families create altars to their houses with offerings to honor their dead. Meanwhile, in Ireland, they celebrate Halloween similarly to how America does. They do the traditional trick-or-treating along with some activities that are native to Ireland. Irish people participate in activities like scavenger hunts, Halloween card games, bobbing for apples, and other things while they have parties or festivals. Halloween is also popular in Canada and is celebrated the same way it is in America and Ireland, showing that Halloween isn't just an American holiday. Myth number 8, Halloween is just about the spookiness and scares. Whether it's from movies, TV shows, or advertisements, it's pretty clear that the holiday's main vibe is a scary and spooky one, which makes many people think that's the only thing Halloween's about, which isn't the case. As we mentioned earlier in the video, Halloween started as a religious holiday to ward off evil spirits and celebrate good harvest. It wasn't until time went on that Halloween got influenced by different cultures and media, which turned it into the holiday it is today. But this doesn't mean that Halloween is just about the scariness surrounded by it, as it still holds religious importance to this day. Some Christians refer to the holiday as All Hallows Eve, where they attend church services and light candles on grave sites to honor the dead. In Mexico and other Latin countries, they also celebrate Dia de los Muertos for the purpose of honoring their dead by making altars and offerings to them. Halloween's a lot more than just scaring people and pulling pranks. To some, it holds religious purposes, and to others, it's a way of gathering together and celebrating. Myth number 9, the legend of Sleepy Hollow is a Halloween story. The legend of Sleepy Hollow is a Halloween story that created the famous folklore of the Headless Horseman and his victim. The story became so popular that a New York village changed its name from North Tarrytown to Sleepy Hollow to attract tourists. Many consider the tale of Sleepy Hollow as a perfect Halloween story, as it's a suspenseful horror story that involves a headless ghost who carries a lit jack-o'-lantern with him on his horse, which makes the perfect story to tell during the spooky holiday. But the thing is that the legend of Sleepy Hollow actually wasn't written as a Halloween horror story, but instead just a regular horror story, as the book never mentions anything about Halloween. The story is set during the autumn season, and it does give off a vibe of Halloween, but the book is not a Halloween story. Myth number 10, trick-or-treating happens only on October 31st. Many kids look forward to Halloween night every year, so they show off their costumes and go door to door asking for candies. It's a night that most kids enjoy. Trick-or-treating has become heavily associated to many people, but it seems like you can't celebrate Halloween without the tradition. Most of the United States has trick-or-treating on October 31st, right on Halloween night. Some states actually don't celebrate the tradition on Halloween Day. States like Ohio, Iowa, Massachusetts, New Hampshire, Wisconsin, and some parts of New York celebrate Baker's Night, which falls on October 30th. Baker's Night is supposed to be targeted at younger kids, since parents don't want them to get mixed in with older kids who might be doing things like pranks that can put little kids in harm's way. Trick-or-treating also falls on different days in countries outside of America, like Mexico, for example. celebrates trick-or-treating on November 1st, since their Halloween lasts several days. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed the video, hit the like button. If you want to see more content like this, subscribe to our channel and click the bell to get notifications every time we upload a video. If you have any video ideas you'd like to see, leave them in the comments below, and your idea might be our next video.